Hi everyone, it's Chenso from RealityArtPod, here to rank the Big Brother 27 players based on how I feel they're doing in the game as of the end of Week 7's Thursday night eviction episode. Before I dive in, I put a link to my BB27 playlist for all my recaps and rankings. If you like the content, consider liking and subscribing, and using my link to try Paramount Plus for free. This week we saw Vinny the Lip win the wall comp, nominating Ava, Kelly, and Mickey. Mickey won the veto, and Catherine went up in her place. And when Kelly won the blockbuster, Catherine was evicted by a vote of 7 to 1. We currently don't know who won the following HOH. Firstly, we lost Catherine here, who last week I had 8th. She just lost Riley, and I was like, okay, Catherine, clock in. And she clocked like 65% in. She did great on the wall and got herself into a place where she could have made a deal with Vince, but she didn't. She made good points to Vince to keep herself safe from both the initial nominations and the replacement, and I don't think she played horribly, but she suffers this week from 6 weeks of inactivity in the game, ends up nominated even though I don't think she should have, and doesn't have the relationships to save herself, especially in a vote against Ava. RIP Catherine. So let's get to these rankings. In 10th, I have Kelly, who last week was 11th. After voting incorrectly, at least her final 2 Vince won HOH, right? Right? Think again. She ends up nominated by him for the second time. Though I do like that this time, she did call him out for the way that he treats her and consistently puts her down in the game. I blame her for not working on the relationship with Vince to the point that he legitimately forgot that they had a final 2. So she goes on the block and continues to shit stir. Ahead of the veto meeting, she has drama with Rachel over the wine, the hug, and she unsuccessfully plays the victim and continues to be mad at Rachel, going as far as saying Rachel's kids and future grandkids won't be proud of her. At this point, I feel like she's overstayed her welcome by being good at competitions. She's disliked in the house. She was gonna go home this week, and I could see her going home next week too. In 9th, I have Keanu, who last week was 10th, another of the players who voted wrong last week. He gets lucky that Vince won HOH, and Vince has loyalty for Keanu, so Keanu is safe this week no matter what he did. His journey through the week starts with him being convinced by Catherine and Lauren that Rachel's gonna beat him in the end, so he becomes bloodthirsty for Rachel. You know, Rachel, one of the few people that want to work with him, and Keanu aggressively tries to get Vince to put Rachel up, which leads to Rachel finding out, and Vince not even doing it, so that was a net negative for Keanu, who already had a crappy game. He's still in the house minority and is a very juicy target, where I could see this week being Kelly and Keanu back on the block, with Keanu back in a place where he can be evicted. In 8th, and here's the first real big movement, I have Lauren, who last week was 4th. This is the closest to the bottom I've ever had Lauren, and I've been very kind to her in these rankings, feeling like she's made smart, careful decisions, and I still kind of stand by that, and when she talks game, it's good, but socially, she's bad. She doesn't communicate with most of the other house guests. She puts so much effort into these players who have one by one been evicted: Catherine, Riley, Zach, Jimmy, and you could trace all of this back to her HOH when she nominated Adrian and gave the other side of the house numbers to evict all of her own people. Well, I also give Zach and Vinny fault in that week for changing their votes, but Lauren turning on Will and Adrian broke up the Bond Alliance, which, had it stayed together, would have run the table and influenced every HOH since then. And thanks to that, she's left with the final 2 with Vince, who's constantly choosing Morgan over her, and Keanu and Kelly, who are not the people you want to have to rely on. Their alliance should be named Nightmare Blunt Rotation. So Lauren's on the bottom, and it's really all her fault. While I don't think she has the social skills to get herself in a good spot, she could start winning competitions, and I think she could survive a vote against anyone she's aligned with. In 7th, I have Ava, who last week was 5th. There was a time when I was impressed, but I'm no longer impressed with her as a player. She has her friends and she's sticking with them, and the biggest thing she has going for her is there are players who want to drag her along, but we saw this week she was on the block for the first time and continues to have this it is what it is mentality and lay in bed all day like Derek F. She even made that big move during her HOH, but isn't even owning it anymore, saying she was manipulated by Mickey, so that's a big reason why in 6th I have Mickey, who last week was 9th. She was going to be evicted last week had she not won the blockbuster, and again this week she's a pretty easy target for HOH Vince. She tried not to get nominated, pushing those tears out, and while it didn't work, at least she tried. She did an okay job integrating herself back with her old friends. When she's good, she's really good, but when she goes on the wrong path and she still tries hard, it's like a dumpster fire. She was the target this week, and she really gobbled in that veto comp, saving herself for the second week in a row. And you know what? Had she stayed on the block, by the end of the week, I'm not as confident as last week that she would have been evicted. She's right on the outs of the main alliance, and if she starts trying to get a crack with Morgan, Will, Ashley, or even Rachel, there's a path for her to slip into the end game. So we get to the top 5, where I do have the Judges Alliance, the only real organized group in the house right now. And in 5th, I have Vince, who last week was 1st. He wins this HOH on the wall, an impressive win. When someone wins the wall, they should have a good week. Why bust your butt so hard only to not make good moves? In this HOH, he's stressed from the start. In my opinion, he should have decided the first night what side he wanted to roll with, the Judges or Nightmare Blunt Rotation, and all the problems he faced and will face moving forward come from his indecision. He nominates Ava, Kelly, and Mickey, safe nominations, but it was also pretty clear from the nominations that the veto was most likely going to be used, and the renom issue was just something he procrastinated, which leads to the whole issue of does he nominate Rachel or not, a decision-making process that stressed the whole house out. He just gets pushed around by everyone, and whoever he's talking to is the person who's controlling him. He basically gets Night at the Roxbury by Keanu, Rachel, and Morgan all week, and settles on nominating Catherine. He says that he gets pushed around like this in his real life too, so maybe his girlfriend back home is just his dom. Well, her sub is out here getting whipped and tied up by Morgan in the HOH room, and he claims he got permission from his girlfriend to flirt in the house, but he didn't, and she says on social media that he'll be facing the consequences when he gets home. To be honest, I don't really care if he cheats. I could really care less if someone I've never met cheats. Go nuts, not my problem. In the end, if they got down to final five, he's the lowest of anyone in the Judges Alliance. He's seen by Ashley as the bottom. He's pushed around by Morgan. He has Rachel out here knowing that he was considering targeting her, and he wasted his HOH evicting Catherine. In fourth, I have Rachel, who last week was seventh. A lot of the good this week for Rachel comes from her decisions last week when she joined the Judges Alliance with her nominees Vince and Morgan. And when Vince wins HOH, that's really her one saving grace that keeps her from being an initial nominee. She puts the pressure on Vince to avoid going on the block with the other judges' help. She sees that she needs to be the last person in Vince's ear. I think she was right about that, as she was slated to go on the block the morning of. So there was a lot of good active play and campaigning, which typically is Rachel's biggest weakness. With all that said, she continues to be a bit messy, which is good TV, but the argument with Kelly right before the veto ceremony, when she was a potential nominee, was so risky and not good. And running information back to Keanu that the HOH was saying was also not good, but there was more good than bad, and I'm impressed that she survived the week. In third, I have Ashley, who last week was sixth. I'm so impressed with Ashley's path, climbing up and up and up in the game, being consistently herself. She's one of the more fun personalities to watch on the show and the feeds. And this doesn't have to do with her game, but she has great diary rooms. She's always putting on a show for us. Ashley's firmly planted in the Judges Alliance, and she's done some camera talk about acting dumb like Elle Woods, and then turning up around the jury. So I hope we get to see the side of Ashley that's clocking in the game and earning power, which could get her up to number one. In second, I have Will, who last week was second. Will's climbed up my list over time. I love his social game, and I see him as an endgamer, and I feel he's finally earned respect as a player. He always has something good to say. He's a smart person and player, and is well connected. I was again tempted to put him as number one this week, but I feel like I'd like to see him make a move or come into some power, other than just being in the majority alliance. In 1B, I have Morgan, who last week was third. Last week, Morgan was on the block, and she formed the Judges Alliance that ended up saving her in a 5-4 eviction. When Vince wins this HOH, Morgan gets to work to keep that alliance together, because for Morgan, a final five with the judges is one that she can comp out on. They still don't know that she's a gamer, and I think she has a strong chance against that group, especially seeing that the players winning most of the competitions all voted her out last week. So she gets to work in a serious pressure campaign on Vince that was unrelenting. She worked and pushed, and that's one thing I like about Morgan, is since the beginning she knows what she wants and she pushes for it. And in convincing Vince to successfully do what she wanted, she took over his HOH. So in a way, she did win the wall comp and is in a great spot in the game after really playing, which justifies a number 1B position. You may be wondering, what's 1B about? Well, in 1A, the best player of the week, I'm putting Chantilly. Chantilly captivated audiences being featured on the live feeds. This iconic diva put in the work, serving face to the cameras, knowing what she wanted, a home. And you know what? Chantilly got adopted this week. So Chantilly, you are my player of the week. I love the animals on the live feeds and wish I could have all of them. So I'm making a donation to Rancho Coastal Humane Society in Chantilly's name so the rest of her friends can get adopted. So those are my rankings this week, but let me know in the comments what your rankings are. I read and respond to every comment. And if you have nothing else to say, let's get some comments saying we love you, Chantilly. If you like this video, consider liking and subscribing. I'll be back on Sunday to recap the nominations episode. Until then, you know where to find me. Bye.